Imagine a land of rolling hills, picturesque countryside, and charming villages, where history seems as quaint as an afternoon tea. But beneath the cobblestone streets and ancient castles of the United Kingdom lies a darker past, one that isn't mentioned in history books or told in bedtime stories. This is the history of blood-soaked secrets, silent betrayals, and unspeakable horrors that shaped a nation. From the gruesome practices of the monarchy to the sinister machinations of the government, the UK's hidden history is far more chilling than you might expect. Are you ready to uncover the darkest secrets of a seemingly idyllic land? On a foggy London evening in 1666, as the Great Fire of London raged through the city, a terrified family huddled together, praying for their lives. But the fire was not the only thing that haunted their nightmares. The father, a mason, had recently been part of a secret project commissioned by the Crown, a project that would change the course of history, though it was never meant to be known. As the flames grew closer, he whispered to his wife, "If they ever find out, we're all doomed." This is a story of a nation's secrets, buried deep, only to resurface centuries later. The bloodline of monarchy, unspoken terrors. The British monarchy is one of the oldest and most revered institutions in the world. But beneath the pomp and pageantry lies a history drenched in blood. The War of the Roses, a brutal series of conflicts in the 15th century, was more than just a struggle for the throne. It was a battle for survival among royal families who would stop at nothing to eliminate their rivals. The infamous princes in the Tower, Edward V and his brother Richard, are believed to have been murdered by their uncle Richard III in a bid for power. Their disappearance remains one of the greatest mysteries in British history, but few dare to speak of the chilling lengths to which the Crown has gone to maintain its hold on power. Moving forward in time, the Tudor dynasty, particularly the reign of Henry VIII, saw the Crown's power reach its peak. Henry's obsession with securing a male heir led to the execution of two of his wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, on charges of treason and adultery, charges that many historians believe were fabricated. The relentless pursuit of power by the monarchy did not end there. The scourge of the slave trade. While the British Empire is often remembered for its role in spreading culture and civilization across the globe, it is also responsible for one of the most egregious human rights abuses in history, the transatlantic slave trade. Beginning in the 16th century, British ships transported millions of Africans to the Americas, where they were sold into slavery. The conditions aboard these ships were inhumane, with slaves packed tightly together, barely able to move, and suffering from malnutrition, disease, and abuse. Many did not survive the journey, their bodies thrown overboard, lost to the depths of the ocean. The profits from the slave trade were vast, fueling the growth of the British economy and funding the construction of many of the grand buildings that still stand in cities like London, Bristol, and Liverpool. But the human cost was immeasurable. The Highland Clearances, Scotland's darkest hour. The Highlands of Scotland are known for their breathtaking beauty, but they also hold a tragic history of suffering and displacement. The Highland Clearances, which took place between the 18th and 19th centuries, were a series of evictions carried out by landlords to make way for sheep farming. Thousands of families were forcibly removed from their homes, their villages burned to the ground. The people, many of whom had lived on the land for generations, were left with nothing, forced to migrate to the cities or emigrate to foreign lands. The clearances were not just about economic gain, they were also a form of cultural genocide. The Gaelic language, traditions, and way of life were systematically eradicated, as the British government sought to assimilate the Highlanders into the broader British culture. The dark corners of British colonialism. The British Empire once spanned the globe, its influence felt in every corner of the world. But the empire was built on a foundation of exploitation, oppression, and violence. In India, the British East India Company ruled with an iron fist, imposing taxes that impoverished millions and instigating famines that led to the deaths of countless people. The infamous Jallianwala Bagh massacre in 1919, where British troops opened fire on unarmed protesters, is just one example of the brutal tactics used to maintain control. In Africa, the British colonizers seized land, resources, and people, often with little regard for the local populations. The Mau Mau uprising in Kenya during the 1950s saw thousands of Kenyans detained, tortured, and killed in a bid to suppress the movement for independence. The full extent of the atrocities committed during this period has only recently come to light, with survivors still seeking justice for the crimes committed against them. The legacy of British colonialism is complex and multifaceted, with both positive and negative aspects. However, the darker side of this history is often glossed over or ignored entirely. How does one reconcile the achievements of the empire with the suffering it caused? Can the former colonies ever truly recover from the wounds inflicted upon them? Or will the scars of colonialism continue to shape their future? The silent epidemic, mental health in the UK. In the 19th and 20th centuries, mental illness was poorly understood and often stigmatized in the UK. People suffering from mental health issues were frequently institutionalized in asylums, where they were subjected to inhumane treatments such as electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and forced isolation. These institutions were often overcrowded, underfunded, and rife with abuse, with patients living in conditions that would be considered deplorable by today's standards. One of the most notorious asylums was Bedlam, or the Bethlem Royal Hospital in London. Originally founded in the 13th century, by the 18th century it had become a symbol of the mistreatment of the mentally ill. Visitors would pay to gawk at the patients, who were treated more like prisoners than people in need of care. The stigma surrounding mental illness persisted well into the 20th century, with many families hiding their afflicted relatives from the public eye. The dark history of mental health treatment in the UK raises important questions about how society views and treats those who are different. While great strides have been made in recent years, the legacy of neglect and abuse continues to affect how mental health is perceived and addressed today. Are we doing enough to support those struggling with mental illness, or are we still falling short? The forgotten victims of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is often hailed as a time of great progress and innovation, but it also came at a tremendous human cost. The rapid growth of factories and urbanization led to harsh working conditions, with men, women, and even children toiling long hours for meager wages. Child labor was rampant, with children as young as 5 years old working in mines and factories, often in dangerous and unhealthy conditions. Many suffered from debilitating injuries or illnesses, and some did not survive. The living conditions in the rapidly expanding cities were equally dire. Overcrowded slums, poor sanitation, and a lack of access to clean water led to the spread of diseases like cholera and tuberculosis. The working class, who formed the backbone of the Industrial Revolution, were often treated as expendable, with little regard for their well-being. The story of the Industrial Revolution is one of both progress and pain. The innovations of this period laid the foundation for the modern world. But at what cost? How should we remember the sacrifices made by those who lived and died during this time? And what lessons can we learn from their experiences? The dark side of scientific progress, unethical experiments. While the UK has been at the forefront of many scientific advancements, some of these have come at a great ethical cost. In the 19th and 20th centuries, human experimentation was often conducted without consent, particularly on vulnerable populations such as prisoners, the poor, and the mentally ill. One of the most notorious examples is the case of Dr. William Cheselden, a surgeon in the 18th century who performed live dissections on condemned criminals, claiming it was in the name of science. Another dark chapter in the history of British science is the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Although conducted in the United States, it had its origins in research methods and attitudes that were also prevalent in Britain. The British scientific community was complicit in promoting and supporting unethical research practices, particularly in the fields of eugenics and race science. The Galton Laboratory, established in 1904, was at the center of the eugenics movement in the UK, advocating for selective breeding to improve the human race. These ideas, though discredited today, had a profound impact on public policy and contributed to a legacy of discrimination and injustice. The use of human subjects without their knowledge or consent, often justified in the name of progress, raises troubling questions about the balance between scientific advancement and ethical responsibility. How do we reconcile the benefits of these discoveries with the suffering they caused? And how can we ensure that such abuses never happen again? The Great Famine, a tragedy of mismanagement and indifference. The Great Famine in Ireland between 1845 and 1852 is one of the most tragic events in British history. Often attributed to a potato blight, the famine was exacerbated by the British government's policies and indifference to the suffering of the Irish people. While food was being exported from Ireland to England, millions of Irish men, women, and children starved to death or were forced to emigrate, leading to a significant decline in the population. The British response to the famine was slow and inadequate, with relief efforts hampered by bureaucracy and a belief in laissez-faire economics. Some officials even viewed the famine as a divine intervention, a means of reducing the Irish population, which was seen as a burden on the state. The legacy of the Great Famine is still felt in Ireland today, with deep-seated resentment towards the British government for its role in the disaster. The famine also had a profound impact on Irish culture and identity, contributing to the rise of nationalism and the eventual fight for independence. The memory of this dark chapter in history serves as a reminder of the dangers of neglect and indifference in the face of human suffering. History is often written by the victors, but what happens to the stories of those who suffered and lost? The dark history of the UK, filled with untold stories of pain and oppression, challenges us to rethink the way we view the past. These stories are not just about the past. They have shaped the present and will continue to influence the future. As we reflect on these events, we must ask ourselves, what can we do to ensure that these stories are remembered and honored? How can we learn from the mistakes of the past to build a better future for all? What do you think? How does this story change your perception of the UK? Do you believe it's important to bring these stories to light? And if so, how can we make sure they are never forgotten? Let's discuss in the comments. The United Kingdom, with its rich history and cultural heritage, is a nation that has had a profound impact on the world. But beneath the surface of its well-documented history lies a darker, less-known narrative, one of bloodshed, oppression, and suffering. From the ruthless power struggles of the monarchy to the inhumane practices of the slave trade and the brutalities of colonialism, the UK's past is far more complex than the picture often painted in textbooks. As we uncover these dark chapters, we are forced to confront uncomfortable truths about the foundations of a nation that has shaped so much of the modern world. It is only by acknowledging and understanding these aspects of history that we can begin to make amends and ensure that such injustices are never repeated. The question remains, how do we as a society reconcile with these dark chapters of our history? Can we learn from them to create a more just and equitable future? Or are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past?